Welcome, everyone, and this is another edition of NFRW on the Issues. It's an exciting educational series that was created just for you, our NFRW members. I'm Ann Shockett, president of the NFRW, the National Federation of Republican Women, and I'm so glad you're participating during what promises to be a riveting, insightful analysis concerning what's foremost on all of our minds, the state of our nation and elections 2020. There's a battle raging for control of the Senate, and our honored guest is leading the charge as chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. As members of the largest grassroots Republican women's organization in the United States, you and I are involved in every aspect of political activism, from the local to the state to the national levels. All issues that affect our nation affect us. And that's why we NFR warriors across the nation are more focused than ever, and we're working harder than ever during campaigns 2020. Thank you so much for your dedication and your patriotism, and you make me proud to be a federated sister and an American. Without further ado, I'd like to ask the state president of Indiana, Monica Kozlowski, to do us the honor of introducing Senator Todd Young from her great state. Monica?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ann. It's my pleasure to join you this evening. We sure appreciate your leadership during this time. It's my pleasure to introduce our senior senator from Indiana, Senator Todd Young. The senator does a wonderful job, and we're so proud to have him here in Indiana. He serves on 4 committees: the Foreign Relations Committee, the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee, the Finance Committee, and the Commerce, Transportation, and Energy Committee. The senator stays very busy. He's been able to connect with Hoosiers during the pandemic through technology like we're using here this evening. Senator Young is a graduate of the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. He graduated with honors in 1995 and accepted a commission in the U.S. Marine Corps. In 2000, Todd was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps as a captain while serving in the Marines and working in as a business consultant. He earned his MBA and his law degree during that time. It was in 2010 that he ran for Congress and served 3 terms in that role prior to running for United States Senate in 2016. The senator lives in Johnson County, which is just south of Indianapolis. He's married to his wife, Jenny, and together they raise 4 children, Tucker, and 3 daughters, Annalise, Abigail, and Ava. And we're so pleased to have him join us this evening. Please join me in welcoming Senior Senator from Indiana, Todd Young.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you for that generous introduction. I see some air claps. Thank you all for your rounds of Zoom applause, and Monica's just been the outstanding leader for our state in so many capacities, but most especially in taking the helm here with the Indiana Federation of Republican Women. But I'm humbled. I say Lady President, I say this to you, President Shockett, by the number of people who are clearly not just involved, but committed to making sure that we maintain a Republican majority in the United States Senate and really do whatever we can in these critical next 90 days to make sure Republicans at the federal level and down ballot are successful this November. So I plead with you to stay engaged, and your participation in this conference call suggests that you're going to remain on the front line. So I thank you profusely. I'm chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, so that means I've been elected in this consequential election environment to defend 23 Republican United States Senate seats. The Democrats are only defending 12 seats, so it's a highly imbalanced environment right now, and candidly, it's also an environment in which Republicans are currently being outspent, sometimes by significant amounts in our battleground Senate seats. But don't despair. We have 8 races that are within the margin of error. So you may see on CNN or MSNBC or reported in the New York Times some national polling numbers as it pertains to the President of the United States or the Republican versus Democrat generic ballot. what really matters as it pertains to, say, the Senate majority is these battleground races. And you should all be encouraged because on account of your efforts and the heroic efforts of some senators in the midst of a coronavirus, a global pandemic, the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, and racial and civil strife, we're effectively tied. This is a jump ball, as we like to say in basketball frenzied Indiana. Okay, so we're on defense in Arizona, where Martha McSally is doing everything she can to make sure that she defeats Mark Kelly, her opponent, in running a very good campaign. In Colorado, Cory Gardner, also a first-term United States Senator, is running an incredible campaign against one of the most popular Democrats in the history of that state, and effectively, tied in that race against John Hickenlooper, who of course ran for president. In North Carolina, where we have the former Speaker of the House, my colleague, Tom Tillis, very talented, comes from the humblest of roots, grew up in a trailer park sort of environment, and then was very successful in the business world and has a compelling personal story to tell. And he's up against a liberal Democrat and is making some real strides in that battleground race. Joni Ernst, who I serve with as a fellow member of leadership, is running a great race against Teresa Greenfield. That race is also tied, but we're on defense there. And in the state of Montana, Steve Daines is up against another former Democratic presidential contender, the governor Steve Bullock. So we're on defense in all those races. I failed to mention Georgia. There's so many states in play that occasionally I'll overlook that, but you don't want to overlook Georgia because Georgia used to be a reliably Republican conservative state, but on account of demographic changes and the growth of Atlanta and its suburbs, that state is trending more purple. But nonetheless, David Perdue, former CEO of a major company and a really quality colleague who's got a great record of accomplishment, is running his race, a tight one against John Ossoff. We can't take our eye off of Georgia as well. Now we're playing a bit of offense. I played sports growing up. It's always more fun to play offense than to play defense. And we are doing that and keeping the Democrats on their toes. So in the state of Michigan, John James, an incredibly charismatic recruit, happens to be a Black Republican, hails from the greater Detroit area. I'm a Naval Academy graduate, so I'm partial towards him. He's a West Point graduate. After his distinguished military career in Iraq, he came home. He worked in the family business, which is the auto business. So I can't think of a better profile. If you're going to build a candidate from ground up, a Black Republican from the greater Detroit area whose family's in the auto business, who has a very accomplished military record, he could be very complimentary towards President Trump as he tries to win that battleground state. In New Mexico, our candidate there, Ron Chetty. Ron Chetty's the weatherman with a high level of name ID, very sharp, good on the stump. And New Mexico is traditionally regarded as a blue state by so many, but we've got a real opportunity to perhaps pick that up in a sleeper race in New Mexico. Susan Collins of Maine. She is winning outside of the margin of error, according to our polling numbers. That's because she's an exceptional candidate. She's done a lot of hard work. We've assisted her, of course, at the senatorial committee level, but I believe Susan Collins is running the best campaign in the country. There are many people who have before predicted the demise of Susan Collins, but she's staying every bit as strong as she did during that Kavanaugh vote. And I'm really proud of this campaign Susan's running, and she's going to win. I have high confidence she's going to win in the end. And you mark my words. I hope this is being taped. We will win Alabama. Alabama's a red state. Doug Jones will not remain the senator from the state of Alabama. He's a nice enough fella. I'm happy to volunteer that to you, but he's not a good fit for the state of Alabama. He is a progressive. He's not a conservative, and And that's a seat we need to pick up, and we will pick up in this election cycle. So again, you know, amidst this atmosphere where we've gone through some tough things as a nation, and we're being outspent, especially by the liberal super PACs that are out there, and will be outspent in every major contested race in the country. It's quite remarkable that our candidates are doing as well as they are. And you know what's really encouraging? Their numbers are trending upward. So I mentioned there were 8 races within the margin of error. That wasn't the case a month ago. So increasingly, we're seeing that the ads that the senatorial committee has deployed and our individual campaigns have deployed are working. Our message is working. People will trust Republicans, trust these Republican senators to take us back to some semblance of normalcy and to achieve the heights of prosperity we were at until this pandemic hit. Now, look, we like to think of the United States Senate this election cycle as the firewall against the far left. This party, the Democrats, is going through such incredible excess. Some of my colleagues, I have to say, volunteer to me that they're embarrassed by it and they're afraid of it. So we need to staunch this. Otherwise, their agenda could be pushed through by Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Joe Biden unchecked. If for whatever reason Donald J. Trump does not succeed, does not replicate his amazing feat of 2016, Nancy Pelosi keeps control of the speaker's gavel, and Schumer were to become the next majority leader, I'll very quickly go through what that means. The first thing that Democrats will do is they'll eliminate the legislative filibuster. That's the 60-vote threshold that has historically been required to end debate on any bill, bring a bill to the floor for an up or down vote, and then allow a vote on its merits with simple majority. This is about minority rights. The Democrats want to eliminate that entirely so that through a simple majority, they can add two new states to the union, DC and Puerto Rico. That's 4 Democratic senators. Then the Green New Deal. So if you like beef, I'm sorry, you can no longer eat beef, right? If you like to drive to work, you might have to take your bike. You need to rebuild your house to Green New Deal standards. And oh, by the way, you're in luck if you just would prefer not to work, because the Green New Deal will support you. It's about so much more than green. It's about restructuring the very way our economy and our society works. They'll significantly increase taxes. They'll come up with a massive regulatory onslaught to undo a lot of the good work that NFRW and others have been pushing for years. They'll do what Mayor Pete has been advocating. A fellow Hoosier in the Iowa primaries and throughout the early Democratic primary states, he tried to socialize this idea of packing the Supreme Court of the United States. I think originally most people heard that, and even among Democrats, and said, you know, maybe that's a bit too far out of the mainstream to be accepted by this country. Well, you know, it appears that this is part of their agenda now, to pack the Supreme Court. So all these things could become a possibility, but we're determined to ensure that we maintain this firewall in the United States Senate. We need your help. I believe we'll continue to earn it. If the past is prologue, you've always been there when I've needed you. First elected in 2010 to the U.S. House. I was able to get across the line against our former governor and U.S. Senator Evan Bayh, the U.S. Senate in 2016. I couldn't have done it without the ladies. I couldn't have done it with our Federation of Republican Women. So I thank you again for this opportunity. Look forward to discussing anything that you would like, President Shockett, and look forward to taking questions.
Thank you, Senator Young. We so appreciate this thorough briefing. And I also want to thank you for offering to participate in the Q&A. And I will be relaying some questions that were sent to us by our membership. The first one comes from Vivian Vosbrink of New Jersey. She writes, the Democrats are highly organized and they stick together. They also play dirty, constantly putting the Republicans on the defensive. how can we Republicans get more cohesive and anticipate the opposition's next move to be on the offensive?
I didn't get the first part. This is Zoom. This
Oh,
is COVID era. So we need to stay unified. We need to stay on offense. We need to drive message collectively as we approach election day. I think that was sort of the gist of it. Is that
yes,
right?
it is. Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. Look, I think the Democrats historically do a good job of this, right? So you heard me compliment their party. They unify as you approach an election day. We need to unify as well. We need to remind the American people what's at stake. So as Mitch McConnell often will remind audiences, this is not going to be morning in America again, right? This is not that election cycle. This is an election cycle where you have an extreme left-wing minority of the country that has hijacked a national political party that is driving the agenda. And we need to talk about the dystopian future that will be realized if they're able to structurally change this economy, our system of justice, our system of government, and undermine our very constitutional rights. So that should not be difficult. Oftentimes it's difficult to come together around the particulars of a particular policy. Is it appropriate for us to include child care payments for states in a relief package? Let's not get too hung up on those things. Let's remember the most expensive, the most consequential, and the most dangerous thing that could happen right now is for Democrats to take control of the reins of power in Washington. So big picture stuff.
Absolutely. This next question comes from New York, from Irene Alter. She writes, like Biden, Harris has vowed to repeal President Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and raise taxes on Americans by an average of $1,200. What are the far-reaching implications of this? Did you hear that question?
I did,
Oh, good.
Madam President. So the far-reaching implications of that is, are you really prepared to impose additional costs on our free enterprise system, on our doers, our dreamers, our innovators, our entrepreneurs, our investors in the midst of a global pandemic? Is that really what you're calling for right now at a time when I'm trying to put forward legislation, bipartisan legislation? And actually, Michael Bennett of Colorado is being criticized for this, right? Because it's capitalistic in nature, but it's a loan program to help out our hardest hit businesses, right? And so if you've got a vice presidential candidate and frankly your presidential candidate that are campaigning on significantly higher taxes as we are emerging from the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, that just does not pass as we said in the Marine Corps, the smell test. All right. And whether somebody is a self-identified Republican or just a boots on the ground, hug the flag American, they get that. So here again, I think we keep the message simple. We just got to get folks to the polls.
Thank you. From Eileen Sobczak, who happens to be the NFRW first vice president out of the state of Washington. Thank you for meeting with us today. I believe it would be disastrous to have mail-in or drop box ballots because the potential for fraud is enormous. In the state of Washington, we've had mail-in drop box balloting for years and still no voter ID process in place. How is the Senate pushing back to protect from voter fraud?
We are resisting any calls to federalize, to nationalize our election system. This is a state level prerogative. We don't need a one size fits all system. And if you adopt a one size fits all system, it can not only be advantageous to the Democratic Party, it's a national security risk. We've got Iran and Russia and China and North Korea and other state actors that are working to undermine our election system right now. If they can get into a voter registration file, if they can get into the voter tally, which are the two most vulnerable places because that's where you aggregate names, or anywhere in between, if we have a unified federalized system, which is exactly what the Democrats want, then they could do mayhem in all 50 states as opposed to particular jurisdictions or counties or particular states, right? And so we need to make that argument. It's not a very complicated argument. It's accessible. It's one I've made to Democrats here in the state of Indiana. They think it's reasonable.
This question comes from Candace Hunt. Do you believe there's a chance for any part of the Durham report to come out before the election or any indictments?
I do not know, Candace. Being a Naval Academy graduate, they taught me that there were just a few answers to just about every question. And I learned that quickly. Is yes, sir, ma'am, no, sir, ma'am, aye, sir, ma'am, and then I will find out, sir, ma'am. So I can look more into that, but I will say Lindsey Graham has a lot on his plate right now in terms of his oversight role within judiciary. Ron Johnson over on his committee is doing some vigorous oversight work, but candidly, there's been a lot of mischief going on, and so there's a queue of different priorities, and I just can't speak to that particular report because I'm not on the committee of jurisdiction. So happy to maybe circle back with you. Maybe you could get with Monica if you like, and we'll try and get an answer.
Oh, absolutely. Now, talking about Monica, she was kind enough to suggest that one of your terrific women of Indiana, Debbie Buckler, was so wonderful to suggest her as our NFRW Legislation and Research Committee Chair. Now, through her, we learned that as a Marine, you can run a 6-minute mile. Is that true, by the way? A 6-minute mile? So what's more challenging, that or running the next 82 days to elections 2020?
Well, that's an easy one. All right. So that is true that I could run. That's been a number of years ago. So I don't want anyone testing me. In fact, my knees are now bad. So I do a lot of videos and swim and online stuff. But that's neither here nor there. Look, the next 90 days are going to be a lot of hard work, but I've never done anything in my life and all my life experiences that matters that hasn't been hard work. Michael Jordan was fond of saying, in order to accomplish big things, you got to do the work. There are no shortcuts. That was his emphasis. And there are no shortcuts to winning elections here. We can't hope that there's some organic turnout of voters. We need to call our friends and family. We can't rely on other people to cast our vote. That's our responsibility. So all of you have an outsized responsibility and an outsized opportunity to shape the future of this country because of your roles, because of your involvement, because you understand how the system works, and frankly, you're attentive to our politics and understand why this could potentially lead to danger for our children and grandchildren. So look, I don't have time to think about the challenges or how tired I'm going to be. When I'm done at making phone calls at 6 or 7 Eastern time, because I know that people are enjoying dinner, it's time for me to move to Central Time. And then it's time for me to move to Western Time. And then it's time for this senatorial chairman to see if we have any donors left in Alaska or in Hawaii. And then, oh, by the way, we got Republicans overseas, and let's try to motivate them. So this Marine is not slowing down.
I'm glad to hear that, because we need this Marine. We received a question from Virginia Carlson. She writes, what is the influence of the Tides Foundation on the current election cycle?
I'm not sure. Maybe, President, if you want to explain that in greater detail, the foundation, it perhaps is something I should be familiar with, but I'm not.
I myself just asked the question. I'll go on to another one.
Okay.
This comes from Sue O'Brien, and I'll find out about the Tides. And I'll get back to you through Monica as well. Sue O'Brien writes, how do you believe the addition of Kamala Harris as vice president to Biden affects the election?
Well, look, the president, regardless of who they pick, might have said it was his number one draft pick. Might have said that, right? But I actually think she could be. I mean, Kamala Harris, personally, I was sworn into office the same time she was. I got to know her at an individual level. I got to know her husband, who's very pleasant. And so she may come across that way in some of the incoming interviews and be a relatable person. But she's also the same person who stood on a stage and she called Joe Biden a racist.
That's right.
Right? I think we need to remind her and Joe Biden of that. If it's fair enough for the number two to bring up, it's fair enough for others to bring up.
Right.
So he's got some questions to answer there. Am I playing hardball? Of course I am, just like Kamala Harris, right? So we need to ask some probing questions as it relates to that. Kamala needs to get a better command of the issues. You know, I was sort of amazed. I actually thought Kamala would end up being the nominee back in January because she's such a talented lady. But I was amazed once she got on the stage how little she actually understood of federal public policy. So I think some of those vulnerabilities will be exposed. And then just the radicalism that she has embraced, from the Green New Deal to massive increases in taxes, is also going to be a real point of contention. And I have to say, as a Hoosier and someone who has known Mike Pence for a lot of years, I think he's going to eat her up when it comes to the debate. So I'm all in with respect to that battle.
And I totally agree with you. Senator, I would like to ask you, as we begin to wrap up this exciting session, and by the way, thank you for such a wonderful overview of what is happening nationwide. Would you like to leave us with any concluding thoughts?
I would. I'd really, first, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity and thank all of you once again for participating in this. But politics is a team sport. I had never run for any office before. I ran for Congress back in 2010. And I practiced law out of my Jeep. I didn't have a net worth or a network. All right. So I spent 2 years campaigning for Congress. I ended up defeating a sitting member of Congress in the primary and a sitting Democrat in a district that had been Democratic 48 out of the previous 50 years. But it wasn't really me. It was a team full of people. And it was very apparent that everyone else got me across the line. Moreover, it was also apparent to me that it wasn't really my name that was on the ballot. Right at the time, I had two children. I've got 4 children, but it's our kids, it's our grandkids' name that's on the ballot every single election. So just keep that in mind. You are actually hearing from a politician, and I'm making an argument. And I'm not in election cycle. My first re-election occurs after November. But I'm making an argument out of cycle that this is the most important election in your lifetime. You may have never heard that before, right? So please stay involved. Talk to your neighbors. Continue to volunteer. Contribute financially if you can, and vote. You need to go from just political fellowship, which is wonderful. We're in the process of activating our faith, as we say. And I know all of you are going to come through. You've consistently done that. And I'm optimistic. I'm guardedly optimistic. Stay focused. We'll get it done.
Well, Senator Young, I have to say it's an honor to have you lead the team. You talk about teamwork, but you are a leader of this team. And it's been such an exceptional privilege to have you as our honored guest. I want to thank you so much on behalf of all of our NFRW members for your service and dedication to our country and to our party. And we NFRW warriors, we are working tirelessly so we can look forward to celebrating tremendous victories in November across the board, capped with our president in the White House. and with great women leaders in all our state federations and in the many, many clubs we have throughout the entire nation, including President Monica of Indiana. We are going to take back the House. We are going to work with you to help keep the Senate and add even more senators to a majority. So on behalf of our women, thank you so much for being with us today, Senator.
Thank you, Ann, for your leadership. Thank you, Monica and Lady Warriors. Thank you so much. Let's get this done together.
Absolutely. Be well and be safe, Senator. Friends, look in your inbox and in Capital Connection for our upcoming notifications for NFRW on the issues and other incredible programming. And also save the date of August 26th for a special centennial celebration, the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. Thank you for participating today. Be well and be safe.